Hi, my name is Chuck Schrader. I am a senior solution architect at SK Global. And today we are going to go over a relatively new feature called bank-to-bank transfer. So we've always had a treasury automation suite. It's always had modules in place to do other types of electronic funds transfers. So we always had accounts payable, so you could do vendor payments. We always on the accounts receivable side had direct debits. But we never really had a great way to do a transfer between two of your own bank accounts. So typically that involved something like signing onto a bank portal, initiating that transfer, and then going back to D365 and recording that same transaction inside of D365. So at the bank-to-bank transfer, we're trying to basically make that same functionality available that we have in our other electronic funds transfers, where we can initiate and control that whole transaction from within D365. So some of the features are listed there. The one I just mentioned, ability to do this from inside your D365 without going into a bank portal. We can initiate transactions in either direction. So from an initiating account, as long as the format supports it, we could do a pool type transaction where this account is pulling money into it from another one of your bank accounts, or where it's pushing money out to one of your other bank accounts. They are bank specific formats. So USACH is very generic and known by many banks. But then we can also do this via the ISO formats, which are bank specific, or any other the bank specific formats. By the way, if you look in the format library for bank to bank, we are just building that out. If your format is not in there, not to worry. We do not charge for updating the format to be able to support bank to bank. You simply just need to put a request in for us to do so. And within a couple of weeks, we can have a new format there for your particular bank that supports these new bank to bank transfers. Same as the rest of the electronic funds transfer suite, we do the field validation to try to catch as many errors up front, and we have the full automated round trip. So we can automate the send of the file to the bank, automate the reading of the response file back from the bank, and accepting or rejecting the transfers based on the responses we get back from the bank. So we're not going to spend a lot of time in PowerPoint. That was it for PowerPoint. We're going to spend most of the time in the software itself. So it starts out in a journal, just like everything else in electronic funds. So instead of starting out in an AP payment journal or an AR payment journal, we are going to start out in a bank transfer journal. So we're going to Treasury Automation, and we're picking the bank transfer journal. In that bank transfer journal, we're just going to create a new journal, again, just like any of the other electronic funds. And if you're familiar with our other electronic funds products, this should all look very familiar. If not, hopefully this will help still understand what it all does. So I'm going in, I click in some lines, and you'll see a couple things that are different from most journals that you've done, or any journals really that you've probably done inside of D365. Instead of having count and offset account, there is a target account and an initiating account. So the initiating account is the account that's starting the transaction. Normally in an AP or AR, this initiating account is always the bank account that we're sending it to. The target account is the bank account that we're pulling the money from or pushing the money to. So just getting familiar with these terms, target account and initiating account. Again, it's a little bit different than AP or AR, but since it's a bank account on both sides, we need a little bit different terminology so we can understand where things are going. So again, we'll come back to this and actually go through a transaction here in a minute, but I just want to go into a little bit of the setup, and then we'll come back here and again finish putting this transaction all the way through. But I thought just to kind of understand what we're trying to set up would help when I explain a little bit about the setup. So in the setup, there's several pieces to set up, but the key pieces is with any of our modules is what does this file look like that we're going to and from the bank. So we're choosing the bank-to-bank file format. And as I said, this library is a lot shorter than some of our other bank format libraries, but we're building this out upon request. So if you have a bank transfer you want to initiate and it's not with one of these formats already in the library, then you just simply need to submit a request to us to put it in there. Again, no charge ever for developing new formats and putting them in this library. So I'm going to go through and pick a format. In my case, it's USACH. Many of the formats only will support one direction or the other. Many of the ISO formats are either meant for AP type transactions where you're pushing money out to another bank. And many of the formats are, other types of formats are more like the AR type of formats where they're only meant for pulling money in and they can't do both. So you'll see the notion here of transfer in and transfer out. Transfer out, AP-like transactions, basically we're pushing money out to another account. Transfer in, we're pulling money in from another account. ACH and Wells Fargo are one of the few formats that support both. So Wells Fargo Payment Manager, USACH can support things in both directions. I'm not familiar with any others that do that. Most of the others, it's only going to support one direction or the other. So if I go and pick this format, I need to know which type of transfers I'm going to be using. So am I going to be using just a CCD? In this case, that's the only one available right now. So the standard ACH transaction for pushing things around. Again, within the ISO formats, there may be more options. And again, we build those options out as requested by our clients. So I picked the ACH, I picked the transfer specification. The next thing I really need to set up is a transfer method. So again, if you're familiar with the other AP or AR, it's a method of payment is usually what's tied to one of our formats. In our case, it is a transfer method. So if I go over and find the transfer methods, bank-to-bank transfer methods, I'm going to need to pick a direction here. So this is, again, since most formats don't support this, and we're going to tie a format to this, we need you to have a transfer method that is either pushing money out or pulling money in. In this case, I set up both and I attached them both to ACH. Again, ACH, USACH is the rare format that can support both. If I have one and I pick a transfer out sort of method, then it will only give me the choice to support those sorts of, to choose those formats that would support that type of transfer direction. So if I go into now back into the screen, so again, I set up a format, I picked a transfer method to associate that with. So now I'm going to go back to the journal voucher here and go through that transaction. So in my case, maybe my lockbox concentration account is, of course, where I'd be getting a lot of money in. So I am going to initiate a pool transaction from that account. So we'll initiate the transaction. The initiating account, the account that's initiating is probably my concentration account in this case. And I am going to do a transfer in. So I'm pulling money into my concentration account from my lockbox account. And just like any other journal, you could build out multiple of these if you wanted to. So I'm using the ACH to do this. And if you're familiar again with our other electronic funds transfers, you should look familiar, the send later and the send now. The send later is going to queue it up for someone else to kind of release this transfer from the bank. The send now is going to queue it up and send it all at once. I'll do the send later just so you can see the separate steps, but most likely I would think who's ever initiating this is probably going to do the send now, which queues it up and builds it all at once. So I'll do the send later. Again, that kind of queues it up in that create and send screen. The create and send screen should look very familiar if you've done AP, EFT, or direct debit. If not, this is what it looks like. So we go to create and send bank-to-bank transfer files. So this is queued up and ready to go. I can come in here and click this and say begin processing to send it to the bank. Again, if I did the send now, this all would have happened all in that one step. So this is what builds the file and this is what sends it to the bank. At this point, I'm waiting on a response back from the bank that says, yes, this transfer is valid, it's not rejected. That could be an email coming back or it could be an electronic response coming back. If it's electronic, the step I'm doing here would happen automatically. So it would go and complete this. I'm going to complete it manually since I don't have a real bank responding to these requests. So the complete step is just really going to reach back in and post the journal and mark the transaction as complete. And that really completes the round trip. And as soon as that gets done posting here, so we should be able to go back to the journal and see that this journal was posted. But again, everything was from inside of D365. I have complete visibility to the entire loop. And hopefully this will help facilitate the bank-to-bank transfers in a way that you're very familiar with, in a way that's very easy and automated for you to deal with. If you have questions or want to see more info on this, sales@sksoft.com is the best starting point, and we'll get back with you. And thanks for your time today.